don't know if you've noticed this, but Obamacare's had a few hiccups lately. Don't you remember, though, we were told that we had to pass this bill in order to find out what was in it? Well, here we are. Seem to recall, Tom maybe can jog my memory here, but if I recall, one of the guys who was really fighting hard for this law, voted for it, was pretty passionate, was a guy named Bruce Braley. You guys know who that is? Look, this law is doing real harm to real people. This law is taking people and disrupting their lives. Millions of people are getting cancellation notices. Families are seeing their premiums go up. The crowd that brought us this website, where they had 3 years to prepare, $500 million to spend, is the same crowd that is now poised to take over 16% of our economy, the healthcare sector. President Obama, though, says he didn't know any of this stuff was going to happen. He said that he had no idea that these problems were in the offing. We had Kathleen Sebelius come to the committee and say everything was ready to go. Here's the issue. If you outlaw the kind of insurance that people actually have, they won't be able to keep those plans. They passed a law 3 years ago to outlaw the kinds of insurance that people have, and they're surprised that people don't have it? Look, we talked about this in the 2010 elections. We talked about this in the 2012 elections. We knew all of this was happening at the time. We heard all of the soaring rhetoric and all of these promises. And now we see what's happening. The way I see it, there are only two explanations. Either they were being dishonest, or they are just incompetent. Frankly, I don't know which one is the worst. I think the left, they're learning a pretty valuable lesson here. I think the valuable lesson that we're learning here, unfortunately with all the human collateral damage, with this Obamacare spectacle, is that you don't shut out the opposition, you don't cram a bad bill into law, you don't say one thing when you know it's another, and then when it all blows up in your face, I'm sorry, is just not going to cut it. That's the lesson I think they're learning. And so the next time you have a famous politician coming through Iowa, breezing through the towns, talking about big government, let's be a little more skeptical. You know, when you take a look at the arguments that were made to sell this law, they were attractive arguments. When I look back at this campaign, and believe me, after this election, it was a tough loss. It was tough for all of us. We were in a funk for a good 6 months because we knew the stakes. We knew what we were going to do, we know what we believe, and we know what needs to happen to get things done. And it didn't go our way. That's obviously very frustrating. As I look back at the campaign, I think one of the problems that Mitt and I had was we were arguing against big government in theory. You see, President Obama passed his program in the first 2 years of his presidency, when Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid were in charge of the place. And those programs didn't take effect until this year, until 2013, until after the 2012 election. Things like Dodd-Frank, and of course Obamacare. And so we had to campaign against big government in theory, the rhetoric, the promises, the empty promises. If you like what you want, you can keep it. Here's the difference now. We've got big government in practice. And what we are realizing is that the results are nothing close to the rhetoric that was used to sell them. What we're realizing is that this is not all that it was cracked up to be. You know, I wonder if people who know now what they know would rehire these people again. What do you think? When you take a look at these issues honestly, that's where I see optimism. That's where I think we have a chance. This is where I think we have a real opportunity. You see, we are no longer looking at big government in theory anymore. We are seeing big government in practice. We are seeing the hollowness of these promises. And we are seeing these issues as they come forward, and we don't like it. I'm not talking about we Republicans, I'm talking about Americans. Everybody. And so what we have to do is we have to show the country that we are not just the opposition party, but we're the proposition party. We have to show truth to power. We have to expose these ideas for how hollow these promises have been, but then we also have to show who we are and what we believe in. And I'll tell you what, we still believe in the American idea in this country. We still believe, as our founders did, that our rights come before government. The Declaration says it best. They come from nature, and nature's God. We still believe that if you work hard and you play by the rules in this country, you can get ahead. That's the American idea. We still believe in that American dream, but the problem is millions of people don't see it. They don't know that they have a crack at it. They don't think their kids are going to be as well off as they are. And so, I think we understand something that the left doesn't understand. That the people who are really focused on selling big government understand. And what we understand is that the American people don't just want comfort. They want dignity. They want the dignity of being a self-governing people. Obamacare is just the opposite. I remember all these debates. Chuck Grassley can say the same thing. We were in all these meetings and all these debates. They kept saying healthcare is a right. It's a new government-granted right. Here's the problem. If government now is the grantor of our rights, then government gets to decide how we exercise that right, where we get that right, who, from where, under what circumstances we get that right. And that's what we're learning under this healthcare law. And we're seeing choices go down. We're seeing prices go up. And we haven't even begun to see all the things that are going to happen to the hospitals and the providers. So the next time, I think people are going to be a little more skeptical, because now we're seeing big government in practice. And so while they've made it a little easier to expose these ideas for what they are, we've got to do even more to make sure we say who we are and what we believe in. You know, unlike the left, what we need to do is have a mandate that is an honest mandate. We need to mandate an honest competition so that we can have an honest victory, so that we can resuscitate this American idea and save this country. When we take a look at this, we are confident in our ideas. We know what fiscal responsibility actually looks like. All you have to do is look at Terry Branstad. Don't spend money you don't have, and if you are, get it under control. We know what patient-centered healthcare looks like. Don't wait for the government to tell you what to do. Don't have the government tell you who your insurer is or what doctor you have to go to. That should be you making that decision. We want all those healthcare providers, whether it's doctors or hospitals or insurance companies, competing against each other for our business, not for government's favoritism. We know what real tax reform looks like. Stop picking winners and losers in Washington. Lower our tax rates for families and businesses so we can keep more of what we earn. You know, the way it works these days, is you have really high tax rates. 9 out of 10 businesses in Iowa and 9 out of 10 businesses in Wisconsin pay their taxes as individuals, as people. Like all those businesses with 50 to 75 people are industrial parks. Top tax rate now because of Obamacare and the other Obama taxes, 44.6%. You know what it is in Canada on businesses? It's 15%. 25% in China, going to 20% in England. And so what we have is this tax code where our tax rates are really high, and then if you send your money to Washington, but do some things we in Washington approve of, then we'll let you keep some of it back. I got a better idea. Keep it in the first place. You decide what you do with it because it is your money. That's what real tax reform is.